Popoff here from the Contrarians, back again with another episode of Reliving Old Reviews as a Useless Tool of Confusion. This is the show where we look at an old review and see if the writer got it right on some legendary album or band or whatever. Today we are going to talk about the Dead Boys and their great debut album, Young, Loud, and Snotty. This is from the New Musical Express, October 1st, 1977, written by Tony Parsons. Super famous UK rock journalist. So this will be interesting. Let's see what he thinks of this. And again, yeah, the idea here and the spirit of the show is, what the heck are you going to say about a record that comes out like this, that sounds like this? I got this as a new release. We loved it as kids. It's super heavy, heavy production, heavy, crazy vocals from Stiv Bators. But let's see what he has to say sitting here in, punk's album year, right? 1977 is punk's album year, just kind of the same way that 1980 is the new wave of British heavy metal's main album year, right? Okay, so Tony writes, if this shower could inject into their establishment punk repertoire the undoubted creative flair that they employ when they're inventing emotive alias monikers. Wow, that's a mouthful. As in Stiv Bators on tonsils, Cheetah Chrome on lead, and Jimmy Zero on rhythm guitars. Also the final flourish of Jeff Magnum on bass and Johnny Blitz on drums. Then their self-publicity pushing them as New York City's Sex Pistols wouldn't grate so harshly on my threadbare, fluffy mohair sweater consciousness. Wow. Okay, well, that's a lot of big words, or a lot of medium-sized words put together in a really big sentence. And of course, we know that the Dead Boys are kind of considered a New York band, but their roots go back to Cleveland, Rocket from the Crypt, and that. So they're kind of from there. It's a little bit like AC/DC doing a lot of hanging out in London, and we think of them somewhat of a London band, a little bit, or boots on the ground, new wave of British heavy metal, sort of, in participating in that. So this is a little bit like that. It's also a little bit like how the Saints at this time they're moving to London, and they're setting up shop, and so we think of Eternally Yours, the second Saints album, as a little bit of a UK situation, right? Same kind of thing. Recorded live at CBGB's and studio mastered, sanitized before available for consumption by the rabbit breeding army of NW neophytes. It's innocuous, flotsam and jetsam that is as volume choking predictable as the weekly implosion of discomat fodder. Wow. This recorded live at CBGB stuff. I've lived with this album all my life. I was unaware that that's the case, but maybe it is the case. It's produced by Genya Raven from 10 Wheel Drive, right? But I didn't know that. Maybe it is. Like, throw enough of any product at the lumpen proletariat, and sooner or later you'll find something that they'll gobble up ravenously, right? Nobody wanted to keep it elitist or anything. Well, maybe just a touch, but I never imagined it would sink to the level of baked bean cans. Wow. Yeah, this is some good writing. It kind of makes you think, and it certainly makes me have to concentrate to read it, right? Okay, the Dead Boys churn out a synthetic sadism soundtrack that lacks the cornball clampet charm of those 60-second Men, the Vibrators, and even the sinister locker room conviction of the Stranglers. So don't even start looking for the chortle-inducing stumbling perfection of the brothers Ramone, the tension of the Pistols' savage grace, the incisive lyrical beauty of X-Ray Specs, the fairly orthodox existentialism of the Clash. He brings up a really good point, and this is a super insightful thing to say, because I recently just did a History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast episode where I talked about albums and bands. I was surprised that when they lightened up and went a little commercial, that I liked them more. And over the years, the Dead Boys have fallen into that situation. For the first 20 years of me living with this album, I thought this was the better album than We Have Come for Your Children. But I like We Have Come for My Children, produced by Felix Pappalardi, even more now. And the reason for that is exactly what Tony says here. To me, over time, it's ossified in my brain that this album sounds like a punk album. And I know it's not this, but it sounds like a punk album made by AI or drawn up in a boardroom. It just, everything about it is the absolute center of the punk bike wheel It's at the hub. It's the most generalized in every way, not eccentric in any way, punk album that there is, sort of thing. Almost like I've often said this as well. I can't remember who's in these skits, but there has been a punk. Well, Gilda Radner doing Patti Smith, right, on Saturday Night Live, and then even on SCTV there was a punk band. John Candy was in it, and Eugene Levy was in it. I just saw it the other day for some reason. But so when those comedy shows do a punk band, it's a little bit like the first Dead Boys album. So to me, there's not a single UK album that comes close to being this, to being so close to what all of your cliches are about punk, kind of thing. And so that's why it's gone a little bit down in my estimation, and We Have Come For My Children has gone a little bit up in my estimation. Okay, this is the dregs, honey. Crass Pyrotechnics, given a facelift of standard bondage, change stud, black leather. It's dross, nevertheless, with boys club nihilism, where the size of your erection is calculated by the length of your cat o' nine tails. Gonna make you scream all night, little nubile, if they could get all the equipment together in time. The token gesture of furious contempt for the female gender, the perennial cover of Closet Case, Rock Schlock, a drone of rivet punching guitar solos, as new wave as Alvin Lee, portentous major chords that the Dead Boys lash out like wet towels, dire fret jerking 3-chord quagmires of boredom, flexing their stunted libido and wasted vinyl like what love is, not anymore, hey little girl, and surprise fellas, caught with a meat in your mouth. The bad value pittance of sub 30-minute album time also includes their brace of machismo gems, Very Sick, All This and More, and Sonic Reducer, which are featured on the Phonogram compilation album New Wave and don't deserve to share the same record deck as the true forgotten bead boys of Babylon the Dolls. So we get a comparison with the New York Dolls. This is why I like doing these episodes, just to see what you can compare to, and a bizarre comparison to Alvin Lee. I don't know where that comes from. He brings up a really cool thing. I believe possibly the very first punk album I ever got was that red new wave sampler with Stiv Bators on the cover, spitting into the camera, or maybe even throwing up into the camera. But yeah, that compilation, and that had The Damned on it, and that blew my mind when I heard that. It's either, I think it's New Rose on there, right? It might even be the first track on it. But that new wave sampler, I think it's French. It was a French import. He's saying that this was on there. I vaguely remember that, but that is really cool. Because yeah, that's an early punk album, that new wave sampler. Okay, the phone rings and it's Johnny Thunders calling. 3,000 Mile Collect. What are you doing, man? Reviewing the Dead Boys album, John. You poor bastard. Caught him already, huh? So that's how it ends. Good review. You know, long but not super long, absolutely packed, action-packed, a lot of great description there, and you really get the spirit of this album from Tony Parsons. But yeah, he's an absolute legend. He's a complete pro. So there you go. The Dead Boys, Young, Loud, and Snotty. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed to us already. Hit like, all that stuff. You can join our Patreon. That gets you the opportunity to be on our panels. Marco sends out all the lists of topics. You can join a topic if you feel you have something to say on it, which is really cool. That's how we met tons and tons of Contrarians friends. But yeah, run off, go listen to this Dead Boys album, Young, Loud, and Snotty.